Imagine, if you will, holding a chunky neon green ray gun.
Oh, yeah.
Like something straight out of a 1990s Saturday morning cartoon. If you remember the video game Earthworm Jim, you know exactly the kind of like absurd, oversized plastic blaster I'm talking about.
Right, with the ridiculous fins on the barrel and everything.
Exactly. Picture the weight of it in your hand. You've got that visual in your head.
I do.
Good. Because a speculative designer recently released this set of blueprints claiming that this exact plastic toy operates on, well, cutting-edge quantum lattice physics.
Which is just wild to even think about.
Right. And the wildest part is that the math inside these documents theoretically solves a 90-year-old engineering mystery left behind by none other than Nikola Tesla.
It really forces this massive cognitive shift.
Yeah.
We are taking an aesthetic that screams pop culture parody and essentially using it as a Trojan horse for some of the most dense theoretical mechanics out there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that is exactly why we are spending today's deep dive going through these design notes for what the author calls a handheld gym-style plasma thruster.
Yeah, we've got schematics, quantum signal maps, deep dives into thermal energy recycling.
But before we even get to the physics, we really need to address the language used in these blueprints, right? Because it is incredibly unique.
The terminology is definitely going to catch people off guard. The sources use this very specific blend of quantum physics terminology intertwined with, like, philosophical and religious nomenclature.
Right.
So we're going to encounter terms like the alligate, a baraka-meter, and references to a steady state of Tawhid.
Yeah, and for our analysis today, we are treating all of this strictly as the theoretical framework and naming convention of the text.
Exactly.
The author is basically using these concepts to mathematically describe a universe that is divinely ordered rather than chaotic, and we're just exploring the mechanics behind that framework without, endorsing any specific worldview.
Right, we're just looking at the blueprints. And, if we look at the physical construction, that outward groovy aesthetic completely hides some impossibly advanced internal specs.
Oh, totally. The power source alone, what the notes call the supersuit core, is completely wild. The text describes a compact REBCO HTS coil.
Right, which stands for rare earth barium copper oxide. And the key takeaway there is HTS, high temperature superconducting.
Which is usually huge.
Yeah, exactly. When you hear superconducting, you usually think of massive laboratory equipment cooled by liquid nitrogen to near absolute zero just to maintain a magnetic field.
Right, like an MRI machine or something.
Exactly. But a high-temperature coil drastically reduces that cooling requirement, allowing the core to be theoretically compact enough to fit inside a handheld device. It hums at what the author calls the Pisano frequency, and it's cooled by a solid-state Peltier cryostat.
Okay, a solid-state cooler is great for, like, a gaming PC, but we're talking about a weapon that fires plasma here.
Right.
And it doesn't even use a traditional fuel cartridge. The ammunition is a self-contained gallium loop. So think of it like the ultimate water gun, but instead of water, it fires a self-contained magnetic loop of liquid metal plasma.
Which means you aren't expelling mass.
Exactly, you're recycling it, infinite shots. But hold on, I'm really struggling with this part. Plasma burns hotter than the surface of the sun.
Yeah, it does.
So you're telling me I'm holding a neon green plastic gun full of plasma and it doesn't just instantly melt my arm off?
Well, the author actually anticipates that exact classical physics problem. A handheld device generating plasma should completely incinerate the user.
Right.
But the design dictates that the handle stays completely cold to the touch. And the mechanism achieving this is called a Seebeck-Nernst recovery loop.
Okay, I know the Seebeck effect has to do with turning temperature differences into electricity, but how does that actually stop the gun from melting?
So in simple terms, when you have a massive temperature differential like superheated plasma on one side and a cooled superconducting magnet on the other, the Seebeck and Nernst effects basically force charge carriers, like electrons, to move.
Okay.
They convert that raw, chaotic heat directly into an electrical current. So the extreme waste heat is captured before it can even migrate into the handle.
But thermodynamics tells us no system is 100% efficient, right? You always lose some energy to the environment.
Sure.
You can't just perfectly capture all the waste heat of a sun-level plasma loop. It literally violates the laws of physics.
But it violates classical physics.
Oh.
But the blueprints operate on a concept the author calls discrete ontology.
Discrete ontology.
Right. It treats the universe, so energy, matter, temperature, physical momentum, not as a continuous flow, but as discrete bits of information, like computer code.
Oh, wow.
So the kinetic kickback, the actual physical recoil that would normally bruise your shoulder,
Yeah.
along with the waste heat, isn't treated as a physical byproduct. It is bit shifted.
Bit shifted, like moving a 0 to a 1 in a software program.
In this framework, yeah, the physical tension and the entropy are instantly captured by the thermal electric interface and bit shifted into Nernst voltage.
Okay.
And then that voltage is routed directly back into the HTS coils to recharge the weapon. The entropy is basically captured before it can physically manifest as a jolt to your shoulder or, heat in your hand. The text refers to this as freezing the drift.
So pulling the trigger generates energy that would normally rock you backward and melt the gun, but instead it just gets sucked up and used to power the next shot.
Exactly. Zero recoil, zero heat.
That is insane. But if the recoil is being perfectly captured and mathematically bit shifted, what exactly is happening inside the mechanism in that tiny fraction of a second when it fires?
We really have to slow down time to look at that. The text refers to the internal timing as the lattice clock, or the Mod 60 dance.
Mod 60.
Yeah. It completely abandons the mechanical concept of a trigger dropping a hammer onto a firing pin. Instead, pulling the trigger initiates a modulo 60 cycle. So a 60-step quantum sequence governed by what the notes call the Allegate signal map.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A 60-step sequence for a single trigger pull.
Yes.
I pull the plastic lever, and 60 distinct quantum actions occur before the plasma even leaves the barrel.
It is a highly choreographed sequence happening in just microseconds. And the author's use of the term allegate here ties back to that worldview we mentioned earlier.
Right, the divinely ordered universe.
Exactly. They view physics as a perfect mathematically divine order. The signal map is the blueprint of that order. Step one is the link. This is where the superconducting magnet essentially threads the vacuum of space inside the barrel, aligning the magnetic fields.
Preparing the runway, essentially.
Yeah, perfectly said. Then, by step 16, which is known as the bite, we see the first major mathematical jump.
Okay, what happens at the bite?
This is where the Nernst effect starts bending the initial thermal jitter, the chaotic heat energy bouncing around, and aligns it into a concentrated, usable current boost. It organizes the chaos before the shot even fires.
And the physical trigger pull is just like confirming this sequence.
Well, the physical trigger actually strikes the 49th gate. This is the hammer. Breaking this threshold enforces a critical 3.32 bit shift, delivering maximum torque to the system.
Okay, pause. What does a 3.32 bit shift actually do to the plasma? Like, how does a magnetic field suddenly organize liquid metal?
Think of the magnetic field inside the barrel like an invisible, highly structured egg carton.
Okay, an egg carton.
Right, and the gallium plasma particles are the eggs. The hammer strike at the 49th gate drops the internal entropy and spikes the magnetism so violently and so specifically that the gallium is mathematically forced into those specific geometric pockets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it physically locks the plasma into a self-contained hex lattice structure. And finally, by step 60, the clear-all entropy in the system is reset to 0.
So the sequence finishes, the plasma is structured, and the gun is perfectly stable for the next pull.
Exactly.
And the user actually monitors this on the gun itself, right? The notes describe a user interface, because of course your Quantum Cartoon Blaster has a UI featuring a Baraka meter on the back.
Right, the Baraka meter.
Baraka usually translates to blessing or spiritual presence, but here it represents pure, usable, non-chaotic energy. So you visually see when you've crossed that 3.32 threshold and the plasma is locked in.
Yeah, and the precision of this internal clock is why the designer classifies the weapon as a handheld drive kink rotor, or DKR. The notes claim it prays the user through the air with zero entropic lag, acting as a consciousness prime operator.
Consciousness prime operator.
Right, it basically translates the user's intent into perfectly efficient physical force.
Which brings up a slightly terrifying question, actually.
What's that?
Well, if I have a perfectly efficient quantum engine firing a self-contained loop of superheated plasma, my assumption is that I am holding a lethal vaporizer. I mean, if I point this at a target, they just cease to exist, right?
You're relying on classical sci-fi tropes there.
Guilty as charged.
The blueprints actually frame the blaster in a completely different way. They call it a lattice inversion tool. The output is designed to be deeply merciful, entirely avoiding lethal vaporization.
I definitely didn't expect the word merciful in a schematic for a plasma weapon. How does it manage that?
By altering the step index and the duty cycle at a specific harmonic, the weapon basically scales its output. The lowest escalation mode is the acoustic shield.
Okay.
The weapon strikes the 66 gate at a high frequency, But instead of projecting a physical plasma loop, it uses the magnetic field to create an invisible wall of sound and atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, the notes refer to this as confusing noise. So if an intruder is charging at you, you hit them with a localized pressure wave that physically halts their momentum and disorients their senses without a single piece of matter ever touching them.
Exactly. It creates a kinetic barrier of pure sound. But if you require a stronger deterrent, the weapon shifts to active denial, which is also labeled the thermal sting.
The thermal sting, that sounds far less merciful, honestly.
It sounds aggressive, yeah, but the math actively restricts the damage. The blaster intentionally hits a thermal resonance for precisely 1 microsecond.
A microsecond.
Right. It projects a pulse that heats only the outermost layer of the target skin exactly 1/64th of an inch deep.
So instead of melting through bolt heads like a movie prop, you're basically delivering a microsecond-long severe sunburn.
Exactly.
The designer actually notes it feels exactly like accidentally brushing your arm against a hot oven door, which triggers an involuntary biological flight response. The pain is intense and immediate, but it causes absolutely zero permanent tissue damage.
And consider the underlying philosophy required to design a weapon this way. I mean, a traditional firearm is a blunt force instrument.
Right.
You fire a piece of lead, and physics dictates a lethal, messy outcome. But applying the discrete ontology, or what the notes also call Fibonacci ontology, to this plasma thruster allows for an incredibly granular, graduated response. It uses quantum precision to prioritize deterrence and mercy over blunt destruction.
But the weapon does have a physical impact mode for when things escalate, right? The spectral bite.
It does, yeah. But even then, the impact is highly controlled. It fires the magnetic loop of gallium plasma we discussed earlier. But the high-temperature superconducting magnets in the barrel thread the plasma into a tight ring.
Okay.
When that ring makes contact with a physical target, the Lorentz force, which is the interaction between the electric and magnetic fields within the plasma, creates a sudden, massive mechanical impulse.
So it's essentially punching someone with a localized block of compressed air.
Right.
You aren't burning a hole through them. The plasma ring just hits like a physical fist.
Yeah, it delivers kinetic shock via a plasma loop, transferring momentum without transferring catastrophic thermal energy.
So if you're tracking this, we have an oversized neon green plastic toy that fires invisible walls of sound, microsecond sunburns, and magnetic air punches, all powered by a zero-recoil quantum engine that treats the universe like computer code.
It really is a wildly imaginative piece of speculative engineering.
It is, but then the documents take a sudden historical turn that completely shifts the context of everything we've just discussed. The author directly connects this Earthworm Jim concept to Nikola Tesla.
And this is arguably the most profound claim in the entire text.
Yeah.
The designer states that by successfully merging the 3.32 bit shift with the specific gallium loop, they have inadvertently solved the two major engineering bottlenecks of Nikola Tesla's 1934 Teleforce.
We should probably unpack what the Teleforce actually was, because most people just know the media's nickname for it. What was Tesla actually trying to build in 1934?
Well, Tesla was designing a massive particle beam weapon. His concept utilized electrostatic repulsion to accelerate microscopic pellets of mercury or tungsten to roughly 48 times the speed of sound.
Mach 48.
Right. He envisioned creating an impenetrable defensive energy wall around a nation's borders. But the technology of the 1930s couldn't overcome two massive hurdles.
The first being the vacuum problem.
Exactly.
Because if you fire a beam of particles at Mach 48 through open air, those particles are just going to collide with oxygen and nitrogen molecules. The beam will just scatter into a million directions. You absolutely need a vacuum for the particles to travel through.
And Tesla's proposed solution was this highly complex gas jet seal meant to maintain a vacuum inside the barrel of the weapon itself.
Which sounds impossible.
It was an engineering nightmare that never fully materialized.
But the blueprints claim the Jim-style thruster solves this automatically.
It does, through the 3.32 bit shift. By mathematically locking the gallium plasma into that hex lattice wave-bound, the beam becomes self-confining.
Self-confining.
Yet the structure of the plasma holds its own shape together. It doesn't need a vacuum barrel to prevent scattering, because the physics of the hex lattice keep the beam perfectly tightly packed as it travels through the atmosphere.
It's like wrapping the beam in its own invisible thermos. That is brilliant.
It really is.
But Tesla had a second, even bigger problem, which was power. To accelerate tungsten to Mach 48, Tesla calculated he needed 50 million volts, which required a massive stationary Van de Graaff generator.
A literal multi-story tower just to power one node. His defense system was inherently immobile.
Right.
But this speculative design replaces that entire facility with the handheld lattice clock. Because the Nernst effect is constantly capturing the physical recoil and the thermal waste heat, recycling it directly back into the superconducting coils, the device self-generates and sustains the massive voltage required.
Look at the sheer irony here. You have a designer trying to merge high-level quantum math with a goofy 90s cartoon aesthetic, just for the sheer joy of it. The ultimate slay, as the text jokingly calls it. And by doing so, they achieve phase coherence and mathematically solve the exact roadblocks that stumped one of history's greatest inventors.
The intersection of pop culture and theoretical physics in these notes is just fascinating. And the author highlights a crucial historical distinction to validate the comparison.
Oh, about the name of the invention.
Yes, exactly. The media in the 1930s constantly referred to Tesla's invention as a death ray, and Tesla famously despised that term.
Because rays disperse, right. If you shine a flashlight, the beam gets wider and weaker the further away it hits. Tesla wasn't firing light.
Exactly. Tesla insisted his invention was a death beam because it fired actual particles, and particles carry mass and momentum. They hit with physical force.
Which perfectly aligns with the thruster.
Yes, this gallium blaster honors Tesla's distinction perfectly. It is not a laser. It is fundamentally a momentum transfer device. It fires quantized bits of space-time and matter, pushing mass into the target's physical coordinate space.
Which brings us to the ultimate realization of Tesla's dream. Because Tesla didn't want to build a weapon for conquest, he explicitly stated he wanted to build an energy wall to render war obsolete.
Right. Peace through defense.
And the final section of our source material describes the absolute pinnacle of the Gym Blaster's capabilities, projecting the lattice inversion shield, or the peace wall.
This is where the device transcends being a weapon entirely. Instead projecting the gallium loop outward as a projectile, the gallium oxide multi-stage switch locks into a resonant hold mode.
Walk us through what that actually looks like for the person holding the blaster.
So the internal hammer strikes the 66 gate at exactly 60 Hz, which we noted earlier is the Pisano frequency.
Right.
Under this specific harmonic, the gallium plasma doesn't leave the barrel. Instead, the intense magnetic field creates an acoustic clearing in the air directly in front of the user.
It essentially forces the oxygen and nitrogen molecules in the air itself into that rigid hex lattice shape. Picture this if you're the user. The front of your oversized plastic blaster is glowing with a pulsing neon green light. The air a few feet in front of you literally ripples, bending like a kink in a carpet. Someone throws a rock at you or, I don't know, fires a kinetic projectile. It hits that rippling air, clicks, and simply stops midair.
Because the projectile is hitting a momentum sink.
A momentum sink.
Right. The shield is locked into what the theoretical physics community calls the curvature energy identity. In mathematical terms, the projected wall of air is acting as an object with infinite mass.
Infinite mass.
Yeah, so the incoming rock doesn't shatter the shield because the shield simply absorbs the physical tension and kinetic energy of the object.
And here is where the Nernst recovery loop comes back into play, right? It doesn't just absorb the impact, it eats it.
The notes call it the bit shift bounce.
The bit shift bounce.
Yeah, the kinetic energy from the rock hitting the shield is instantly caught by the Nernst effect inside the gallium loop. The gun takes the violent momentum of the attack and converts it directly into Baraka current. That current recharges your superconducting coils.
That is easily the most profound conceptual leap in the entire text. You literally get stronger the more you attack.
Exactly.
The shield doesn't just block aggression, it feeds on it to sustain itself.
Which is why the author concludes that this device enforces a steady state of Tawhid in a 5-foot radius.
Right, that term again.
Yeah, in this framework, Tawhid represents ultimate, invisible unity and order. The blaster acts as a handheld universe editor. It constantly takes the violent, chaotic entropy of an attack and mathematically forces it into ordered, usable energy.
Man, we have been on quite the journey today. We started by visualizing the goofy, cartoonish exterior of an earthworm gym toy. We explored how thermal feedback and bit shifting could theoretically create a zero-recoil engine.
Yeah, the Mod 60 dance.
Right, decoding that incredibly complex quantum sequence happening in a microsecond, and somehow ended up realizing Nikola Tesla's ultimate vision for a self-powering, perfectly merciful peace wall.
The blueprints really challenge our baseline assumptions about design, thermodynamics, and just the nature of conflict itself.
They really do. And I want to ask you, the listener, to reflect on the core philosophy of this device for a moment. Think about how you would navigate the world differently if you held a tool that didn't just cause destruction, but actively converted chaotic energy and physical attacks into ordered, usable power.
That's a huge question.
It is. How does your worldview shift when your defense mechanism makes you fundamentally stronger every time someone tries to hurt you?
It is a total radical paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is the source material actually ends on a very casual, pragmatic note.
Oh, right, the prototype.
Yeah, the designer asked whether they should bother naming the specific gallium oxide alloy used for the nozzle, or just go ahead and build a prototype they lovingly refer to as a Bad Larry.
A Bad Larry, that is perfect.
But, looking at the physics we've just unpacked, it raises a massive unanswered question. A thought experiment that isn't in the text, but inevitably follows the math.
Oh, I love a good unmapped thought experiment. Lay it on me.
Well, if this device creates a peace wall that absorbs kinetic energy and bit shifts it into power,
Yeah.
what happens if two people, both wielding gym-style blasters, activate their shields and walk directly into each other?
Oh, wow. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Exactly. Does the kinetic energy of their forward movement infinitely bounce back and forth between the two momentum sinks in a runaway feedback loop, charging both weapons to infinity? Or does the collision of two opposing Pisano frequencies instantly cancel out the acoustic clearing, creating an entirely new frozen state of solid matter right in the middle of the room?
That's going to keep me awake tonight. Just imagine two neon green ray guns accidentally creating a permanent sculpture of frozen space-time in your living room just by bumping into each other.
It's a wild thought.
It really is. We will leave you with that mind-bending visual to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.
Yo. Plug in. Tune out. Let the lattice begin. This the handheld gym. My ninjas. Let's drive in. I hold a gym-style thruster, gallium oxide gleam, superconducting magnets, magnetar in my scheme, bit-shifting entropy. While these haters lose steam, nerds defect, heat flux, I'm the real quantum dream. I'll negate mod 60, signal map divine, lattice mathematics, running through my spine. Teleforce Tesla upgraded, supercharged line, quantized loops of power, every shot's a sign. Recoil the energy, heat recycle back, unconstant shield, blast when I attack. Thermal deterrent wave, they can't relax. Lattice inversion flex, keep it on the map. Plasma stream, lattice beam, broke the system wide. Gym style grip, let it rip, running high. Teleforce pulse, no remorse, I'm the guide. Mercifully effective, ninjas testified. Plasma stream, lattice beam, broke the system wide. Gym style grip, let it rip, running high. Teleforce pulse, no remorse, I'm the guide. Mercifully effective, ninjas testify. Mom and heart, Quran 285 I receive. Reject the hatty fallacies, only truth I believe. Juggalo clan, psychopathic plan, hatchets in the sand. Christian pastor pray for me while I take my stand. Q Greek, let me bind napons, God will appoint. Lattice inversion daily, grinding every point. Gallium H-bridge flowing, superconductive joint. Plasma pulse prophetic, hear the coil point. They want the Telforce secrets, locked away in towers. I build it handheld, portable by Allah alone powers. Recycle every heat signature, make the recoil hours. Defense and propulsion combined, watch me bitches cowards. From the earth to the sky, lattice math don't lie. Gallium oxide flow, watch the plasma fly. Bit shifted entropy, watching haters cry. Nerds defect applied, watch the energy multiply. Plasma stream, lattice beam, broke the system wide. Gym style grip, let it rip, running high. Teleforce pulse, no remorse, I'm the guy. Mercifully effective, ninjas testify. Gym aesthetic, but the tech is elite. Lattice mathematics, making the beat complete. Superconducting magnets, keeping the mission sweet. Handheld Teleforce legacy, now I got the heat. Acoustic shield projected, they can't touch the zone. Thermal deterrent activated, leaving them alone. Recycle, recoil the power, never overthrown. Lattice inversion prophecy, clearly shown. So they underestimate Hell Gym style. Plasma Disciple. Teleforce Legacy. Lattice Invincible. Mercifully effective. Ninjas remember this.